pleasure of I've asked someone who I have had the pleasure of getting to know through doing service at different times over the last year or so. Someone whose story and sobriety I admire and just is a cool guy. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Joe C.
Hi, friends. Good to see y'all. I'm Joe. I know a lot of you. Look forward to getting to know the rest of you. And I'm someone in long-term recovery. I guess, if a week was a long term, I remember that seemed like that's a long time. And probably it felt longer than a decade. But anyway, whatever you want to call me, dipsomaniac, alcoholic, addict, I don't find any of those words personally stigmatizing or any of that. But it's all the talk. It seems we can't solve the general problem of why do people who say they want to stop and then can't stop. So we try to change the language, improve the outcome rates, it seems. I don't know. I've been around a while and I'm fascinated by all these things. I don't have much figured out. I saw a presentation yesterday, which I've seen before. It was called Generous Orthodoxy and AA. And the basic premise is, orthodoxy, we know what that is, right? It's sort of people who, sort of stick to the script, right? And then there's generousness, which is interpret it, make it wide open, so we've got our preserve the integrity of the message members of AA, and we've got our widening the gateway members of AA, and both see the others as, threatening to the overall well-being of the fellowship, save time, see it my way. I've been that way too, so I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. And so this, it just got me thinking about a whole lot of things, and because I'm thinking about that, I'll probably touch on a lot of that sort of stuff while I'm just telling you my AA story, right? So I got sober when I was young. I was it was interesting. I realized I love AA history. I didn't when I was new in recovery. When I was new in recovery, I remember sitting in district committee meetings and it would be time for archives. There's no future in archives. Why can't we just think about, how to, better prepare AA for the next person to walk in the door, right? But if you care about the future, you better know the past. Otherwise, you're going to repeat the same mistakes. I say you, I'm sorry. I should say that's true of me. That's historically true of societies and cultures. And I learned the hard way that I better get interested in how we got from A to B and then from B to C and so on and so forth. It just like I had to in my own recovery. I had to sort of take stock of how did I get here, right? And I got here with, you couldn't scare me. And I discovered, speaking of history, I was listening to the memorial for Jim Burwell. And Jim Burwell, unless you just fell off the turnip truck and ended up in AA, he's sort of the notorious as the original AA atheist. And whether that's exactly true or not, doesn't matter. He was outlived both our founders, carried AA to a lot of different places. He traveled a lot, loved AA, started AA, loved helping alcoholics, and died in San Diego. And I heard a recording of his memorial service, and it was like a who's who of Southern California AA. It was just amazing, the people who sort of came to the podium and spoke, and his wife Rosa was there, and it was just super. It filled in some blanks for me, filled in some dots. And I learned that the day he died, it was a Saturday in September in 1974. And that was the day he died was my first trip to a hospital as a result of my alcoholism. I was in grade 9, and we oldsters, we grade 9ers, so we're going to show the grade 8s, how to party. It was their grade 8 dance at high school, right? In Quebec, where I came from, high school was grade 8 to 11. And so now I'd been preparing for this. I took this job seriously. I'd been drinking all day. So, and I don't have good impulse control, never have. And I was already out of it. As the music, we could hear the music blasting through the wall of the gymnasium. My knees collapsed. I just fell to the ground. I heard people talking to me. I couldn't talk to them. Joe, get up. Joe, get up. We got to go. It's starting. And I'm just staring up at the stars. And the last thing I remember is they were tugging at my shoes. Someone was tying my laces to the bicycle rack, saying, he'll be fine. Let's just leave him, like I'm a horse or a dog or something, right? Just, and the next thing I saw was I'm staring up at some lights, and there's a window on a wall that's sort of high up, very institutional. I can't see out the window, but I can see there's light coming through it, like you see here. And I go, that doesn't make any sense. It's Friday night. Where's that light coming from? Where am I? What day is it? And I'm trying to piece this together. And I was found at 5 o'clock in the morning by the Zamboni driver at our high school arena when he was opening up for practices and tryouts that would be all day Saturday. And he found me face up in my own vomit, thought for dead. And turns out I lived, right? I had my stomach pumped, and I'm lying there just sort of coming to on the gurney in the hallway in the emergency department. And I wasn't afraid that I almost died. I just wanted to get back to it, get back to the party, right? I just wanted to get back to some booze, someone, oh, Joe, do you think you have a problem? Someone who has a flat tire shouldn't stop driving, right? Like, shit happens, right? Like, let's carry on, right? Nothing to see here, folks, right? Just a day in the life of, right? And I want to touch on how badly I treated everybody, and how little regard I had, and how self-absorbed I was. I'd been 14 for less than a month, right? I've been drinking since, I was an opportune drinker since the time I was like 8, right? Parents had a cocktail party the night before. There's still drinks around. We're up, they're passed out, right? I'm finishing the drinks, right? I would try anything, right? And I remember the doctor was trying to explain how I should feel lucky to be alive. And I was aching. I was in bad shape. I did not feel lucky to be alive. He and I were not connecting, right? Like, this was someone who did not understand me. And I thought he was a dick, and I treated him like shit. Now, here's a guy who did not sign up for working with someone who's, covered in my own vomit, probably piss as well, right? Like, he's working the night shift. This is how his shift ends. He has to save my life, right? And I don't care. I have no empathy for him, he's an obstacle. I got to get back. I got to get out of here. I got to get, find out what happened, right? I'm more concerned about my reputation with my peers at school. What did I do? What did I say? Am I engaged now? Like, who knows what I got myself into, right? I did find out that when they read me the toxology report that I did cocaine for the first time, way out of my price range, right? I'm not that kind of highfalutin, high life alcoholic addict. And I certainly didn't have a bankroll. My paper route didn't there was no expense account associated with that. And so who I did it with, where I did it, how I, who knows what happens to a 14-year-old, right, who's in a blackout, right? But anyway, that's what he told me, and I wasn't listening. And then all I remember from my mother, who came to pick me up and brought me a change of clothes, and I'm sure she was woken up at like 6:30 in the morning on a Saturday. She's like, her latest husband is in AA when she married him, and she was trying to sober him up, and then she joined AA. So she's like a few months sober herself. She sort of joined the AA club because they have a better sense of humor than the Al-Anons, or no, that's not fair. She just belonged there, right? Like I go to Al-Anon too, right? So, all I remember from what she had to say was she was, once again telling me her problems. Here she is, a childcare worker with an underage drinking son. How does that look? Blah, 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 having to wake up in the morning. You didn't. I could have found my way home, right? Like, she was an obstacle for me to get what I thought I needed. I needed another drink. I needed to sort of settle down. I needed to figure things out. And anyway, with her, being 4 months sober, she's got the righteousness of the recently converted. Joe, you got to go to an AA meeting. And I remember going to a meeting just to get her to shut up, right? It was the best way to resolve the situation. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. What a waste of time that is, right? So, okay, I'll go. And it was sort of a way to prove to her, of course, I'm not, right? And must have been something I ate. I don't know. And, and I went to the meeting. I didn't thank the guy who took me to the meeting. I didn't want to be there. And I just, carried on. I never went back to thank the caretaker, the Zamboni driver who saved my life. I was embarrassed. I didn't. No way was I going to go thank him. I was too humiliated. But like, this is what I'd become in such a short time, right? Just this sort of parasitic, selfish prick, right? Full of feelings, but only about myself, right? My needs, my incomplete life, how can you help me? I just, it's really unattractive to me now to sort of look back, right? And just to see what sort of state I was in. Because like, I remember for years telling that story, and I could only sort of picture me as a victim of a series of bad breaks and serious misunderstandings, not someone who just shit on everybody's day, right? But because that's what I did, right? And by the time I got back to school, it was page 8 news. There hadn't been anything big. No one was talking about it. Phew, I dodged a bullet. That's, it's not like this was 1974. I couldn't check my phone to see who I texted last or what photos were on, TikTok or whatever. I just had to figure it out, right? And this was, like, by the time I was 3 months into being 16, I was sober for good, but I didn't know it at the time. I was planning my escape, because I'm sort of a second generation alcoholic. I knew all about AA, and by now I was taking my cousin to AA just to help her out because she had real problems. And And it was easy to see that she was a real alcoholic and sobriety would be good for her. I could see AA worked. I couldn't see how it could work for me. I didn't see how it was a life worth living to me, right? So, and so I was acting as if my name's Joe and I'm an alcoholic. Sure, I'll join the group. Sure, I'll make the coffee. You're giving me the key to a church, right? I'll be the first one there. I can take whatever I want. Are you kidding me? You know, like, have you thought this through? I'm not filling out any forms. I'm not applying for a job. You just like, yeah. And again, my only concern was, what if one of my friends saw me going into a church basement? You know, and I decided I would tell them I'm robbing the place, and you know, just to protect my reputation. This is what I thought was, you know, Joe Cool, right? And so here I was, you know, like my drinking was just like I was this pinball. There's all kinds of other misadventures, more trips to in front of judges and back to that same hospital, you know, with muggings and suicide attempt and all that sort of stuff. But that's just the stuff, right? So I can see AA works. I can't see it working for me. The idea of a sober life is just totally unattractive. And someone said, Joe, if you're trying to help your cousin, why don't you take her to just north of Montreal in the Laurentians, is a place called St. Jerome, and they've got a young people's conference there. And you know, they probably said, Joe, have you ever been to a young people's conference? And I said, oh, yeah, hundreds, dozens, maybe a couple anyway, for sure. You know, like I was just that way, right? You know, have you ever done acid before? Oh, yeah, with Jimi Hendrix. You know, like I just like I lied when it was unnecessary just to stay sharp. Like it's a survival technique for a teenage alcoholic. It's just how you get by, right? So I'm in AA and nothing's changed, right? I just make shit up. And so I bring her there, and I didn't feel any sort of white light experience, but I did leave there different. My attitude about sobriety was different. I had this sense of there was something cool about recovery. When I left the young people's conference, we just had a lot of laughs. There was a dance, there was an international volleyball tournament. No one kept score, right? It was just, you know, in the gymnasium of this monastery. And, you know, we just, you know, it was hysterical, right? It was, you know, there were people from Rhode Island and New York and Boston and other parts of Canada. And it was, you know, it was a hoot. I had a lot of fun. And so I never saw sobriety as a lot of fun. It seemed, you know, like white bread, no butter, right? Like it was just like nothing, right? Like it just, that's not a meal, right? You know, that I can be sustained on that. But is it a life worth living, right? And I did not see sobriety as a life worth living. But now I was altered. And why? Because I connected, right? I didn't just hear the AA message. I could see myself in this story of recovery. Because they talked my language. People were getting back into their bands. They were going back to school. They were, you know, Euro backpacking, whatever, right? They were, you know, just living large in sobriety, realizing, you know, the goals they never met when they were drunk and high. And so I was changed. I was forever changed because I heard it in my own language. And I think that's huge for secular AA too, right? You know, like how many people just go to an AA meeting and they see this is working for these people, but I can't imagine how it could work for me, right? You know, like I wouldn't bring my friends to this meeting. I'd be embarrassed, right? You know, like it's just not, yeah, I'm not comfortable here. I don't see myself in these stories of how they're describing it, right? And so I connected with AA. I was already going to AA, but I don't think it's attending AA, it's engagement with AA that makes a difference. You know, by the time I came back, I was on the committee for the next conference. They were counting on me. I was in charge of making the coffee. My group was counting on me. You know, I couldn't get sober on my own because I didn't see my own life as a life worth saving, but I wanted to save my cousin's life. So that was a new set of rules, right? And now other people were counting on me. So when I had these ideas of, well, but when am I going to go back to the party life? Well, not now, because they're counting on me, right? It was like I was just putting it off. I wasn't committing to sobriety. I was sober 6 months and, you know, planning my escape, right? I just didn't know how it would work out, but I did not think I had the integrity to stay sober. And I stayed sober, and you know, I got connected, I stayed sober, and, you know, I've been sober ever since, but there was no way I knew when I had my last drink it was my last drink, right? Like, I remember where it is. This nonsense we hear about, if you can't remember your last drink, you haven't had it. Some of us were in blackouts. You know, and it was pretty foggy. In fact, I don't know. I remember there was this Friday night where I had some beer, and this other time I was smoking weed and jamming with my friends, and that was a Saturday morning. So I picked the Saturday because maybe that Saturday was actually the week before, because I wasn't counting my days, because I wasn't staying. It wasn't until someone said, "Oh, you're coming up on your 3 months. What's, you know, who's giving you your 3-month chip?" I go, "I don't know." "Well, who's your sponsor?" And a friend of my mother's came by, younger, hipper, Nancy. "Nancy, want to be my sponsor?" "Yeah." "Okay, Nancy's giving me my, so when's your sobriety date?" So I sort of worked it out. We don't even know Dr. Bob's sobriety date, really. You know, like, so for the same reason, right? You know, they didn't think it was a big deal. Right now, it's a big deal. That's the birth of AA, right? But at the time, you know, it's just how it goes. So, let me just have a look at the clock. So I'm just gonna, like, I've talked a lot about this one little thing, sort of connection, right? And I've learned a little bit about people who study alcoholics and people in recovery, and how recovery happens. And a lot of the academics, they don't care about steps or eightfold paths or positive affirmations or CBT or any of that stuff. They use this kind of unscientific, if you ask me, but they see this commonality in recoveries of all kinds, as they call it CHIME, and they borrow it from sort of a social capital model, and it stands for connection, hope, identity, meaning, empowerment. And I look back at my recovery, and all of those things happen once I connected. That hope, it wasn't my hope, it was your hope. I didn't have any hope for me, but hope is fucking contagious. It's like crack cocaine. It is fucking contagious. Other people around you have hope, you're going to get it too, right? That's just how it goes. And so I got hope from the connection I had. And then I developed this identity. I left that young people's conference with, I could picture myself as a sober alcoholic, right? You know, that I had this identity now, AA member, right? And AA itself had meaning, right? Helping my cousin had meaning. Being a needed, required person in my home group had meaning. And empowerment just comes from this, I'm doing it, we're doing it together. I couldn't do it alone, you couldn't do it alone, we're doing it together. Boom, right? I can do this, right? And that happens here, it happens there, and it certainly tells me that, and it happens in the big book meetings. And I spend a lot of time thinking they shouldn't be doing what they're doing at their meetings. right? Because, you know, they're embarrassing AA, right? You know, I remember being at the Public Information Committee and they thought if more doctors had big books, you know, more people would come to AA. I thought, are you kidding me? You know, like, you know, just like, it just seems like make AA great again, right? You know, sort of, you know, just this sort of backward thinking, right? But I'm guilty of, you know, sort of fussing about what they're doing at their meeting, right? And whatever they're doing at their meeting, what makes their meeting different than my meeting doesn't friggin' matter about outcome rates. They're getting people sober. Our group is getting people sober. Our group is bigger than it was a year ago. We have more and more newcomers coming. They're getting sober. I'm sure whatever the thing is that appeals to people at all of these other meetings, you know, if it doesn't work, they'll fade away, right? You know, call it God's will or, you know, natural selection, right? You know, something people insist on repeating something that doesn't work will meet an obvious end, right? But if it is working, who am I to judge it? Just because I don't understand it doesn't mean it's not legitimate, right? I have a yes and attitude now, right? Just give me the right to do what I want at my group. You do what you want at your group. And that's fantastic, right? And if the people in my group won't agree, I can start my own group, right? So it's this great democracy, right? There's no overseer, or there shouldn't be. And so something's going on. People are connecting at those other meetings. People are getting hope at those other meetings, identity, meaning, empowerment. And you know, and that's kind of cool. It gives me this, you know, we don't have this figured out yet conclusion, and I'm okay with that. There's still some mystery to it, right? You know, I don't like reductionist thinking anyway. Even that, you know, that famous, the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. I go, really? I can find connection at a crack house. I can find connection with my barfly friends, right? You know, I needed people who sort of portray pro-social behavior. I need to connect with them, right? So it's got to be the right kind of connection, right? So it's simple and it's nuanced, and we don't know the answers to it. I feel sorry for, I just read a book by someone who got sober, became a neurosurgeon, thought they would solve all the problems when they find about the brain science of addiction. And 25 years later, well, we've got these colorful scans, but we don't know shit, right? Like yes, they've moved the needle, right? Absolutely. There's been great advances. There will be more, but mystery is always going to be part of this thing. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for joining us today and sharing.